Ladies and gentlemen, ABC just suffered one of the most humiliating on-air interviews in modern television history. I'm talking about a live broadcast that went completely off the rails when Vice President J.D. Vance absolutely destroyed and dismantled George Stephanopoulos and the corrupt media narrative that they've been pushing for years. I mean, this wasn't just a bad interview. This was a complete implosion. Stephanopoulos cornered himself, stammering through his own talking points, and finally, in front of millions of Americans, rage quit mid-sentence, cutting to commercial after being exposed live for pushing lies about former ICE director Tom Homan. But guys, this is where it gets wild. In fact, the moment that JD Vance turned the tables and called out ABC's obsession with fake scandals, he didn't stop there. He linked their media cover-up straight to Letitia James' federal mortgage fraud investigation. In fact, guys, I'm talking about the same Letitia James who spent years weaponizing her office to go after President Trump in one brutal outrage and exchange. JD Vance didn't just expose a journalist. He exposed an entire system. ABC's credibility is completely gone because this wasn't about Tom Homan or even about one interview. It was about the truth finally breaking through the noise. So today, I want to go ahead and unpack every second of this meltdown, from the lies that started it to the rage quit moment that ended George Stephanopoulos' career in real time, to the Letitia James bombshell that's ultimately sending shockwaves through the entire political world. Guys, hit the like button, subscribe. I want to go ahead and roll this back because what you're about to hear, this is the moment that legacy media lost control. So, ladies and gentlemen, this wasn't just another Sunday show. This was a live detonation on national television. ABC's George Stephanopoulos thought that he was setting up JD Vance for a gotcha moment, a quick soundbite to smear Trump's administration and to feed the media narrative that conservatives can't be trusted. But what he didn't expect was for JD Vance to fight back and win. So right from the start, Stephanopoulos hit him with the so-called FBI audio tape story, claiming former ICE director Tom Homan was caught taking $50,000 in cash. Well, JD Vance, calm as steel, dismantled that lie in seconds. He reminded George and the millions watching that Tom Homan has spent his entire life enforcing immigration law, facing death threats, and standing on the front lines while politicians hide behind studio lights. But George wouldn't let it go. He pushed again and again, desperate, trying to trap Vance into confirming a crime that doesn't exist. So that's when the temperature in the studio shifted. JD Vance, he leaned forward and his voice very steady, eyes locked into the camera, and he said it very plainly. This is why fewer and fewer people watch your program, George. You're lying to the American people. Wow. The air went cold. Stephanopoulos looked stunned, and you could feel it. The moment legacy media lost control right then and there. So here's what you need to understand, okay? ABC is bleeding out. Their audience has collapsed, their credibility is in shambles, and the network's executives are scrambling for something, anything to spark outrage. And what better way than by targeting Trump's vice president on live TV, right? This wasn't journalism. This was a ratings trap designed to create a viral smear against the administration by twisting facts into scandal. The same network that spent years defending Biden, Fauci, and every other deep state bureaucrat you can think of, all of a sudden pretends to care about accountability. It's laughable, guys. And JD Vance, he saw it coming. He knew the setup. He saw it, okay? JD Vance is rather sharp if you hadn't noticed. This is why he walked into that interview loaded with facts, patience, and righteous anger. He didn't take the bait. And when George realized that he had lost control of the narrative, that's when the panic began. Because every word that JD Vance spoke exposed their bias. Every question George asked revealed their desperation. But by the end of the segment, ABC wasn't running an interview anymore. They were running from the truth. It used to be normal to stick with one Medicare plan forever, but times have changed. Premiums rise, doctors switch, benefits vanish. This is why the new normal, it's reviewing your Medicare plan every year with Chapter. They make sure that your plan grows with you. Now, one of our viewers, she said, Chapter made checking my Medicare plan so easy. I'll never skip it again. So let me ask, are you going to stick with the old way, or are you going to join the new normal like most people already are? Now, most people, they're dialing that phone number right there at the bottom of your screen, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. Now, folks, this right here, this is where the interview went from tense to downright explosive. Stephanopoulos, he kept hammering the same question like a broken record. Did Tom Homan accept $50,000 over and over again? Kind of like he was reading from a script. I mean, like he didn't want answers. He wanted headlines. He wanted that clip that he could play on loop across every liberal outlet by noon. That's what he wanted. But JD Vance, he wasn't about to let that happen. He looked George dead in the eye and said, Tom Homan didn't take a bribe. That is a ridiculous smear. And the reason you're going after him is because he enforces the law. Boom. You could pretty much see the color drain from Stephanopoulos' face, just drag down. Vance, he didn't just defend Homan. He flipped the entire conversation. He reminded America that this so-called journalism, it was nothing but punishment for anyone who stands up for the border. That's all it was. Tom Homan risked his life to secure this nation. And what did the media do? They painted him as a criminal because he dared to protect American families. That's not reporting. That is propaganda. And JD Vance wasn't having it. In fact, as the vice president spoke, it wasn't just Homan that he was defending. It was every honest American who's been slandered by media elites that will never know what sacrifice really looks like. And then JD Vance flipped the switch. He took control of the interview. He said, George, instead of obsessing over this fake scandal, why don't you cover the real story? The government shutdown that your Democrat friends caused. Boom! The entire room froze. JD Vance didn't hold back. In fact, he called out Chuck Schumer by name, reminding viewers that the Senate's refusal to pass Trump's border funding bill had real-world consequences. Low-income mothers were losing access to food through WIC. Troops' paychecks were being delayed. Meanwhile, ABC was too busy playing defense for the Democratic Party. That's when the tone changed. You could hear the frustration in Stephanopoulos' voice, that nervous stutter. He realized JD Vance had taken the wheel. This wasn't an interview anymore. This was now a reckoning. So JD Vance told America the truth. While media elites chase fiction, families are out here suffering. That's not politics. That's the reality. And ABC just got caught ignoring it live on air. And that, ladies and gentlemen, this is when it happened. This is the moment that will live in broadcast infamy. JD Vance had just finished torching the fake narrative when George Stephanopoulos reached his breaking point. His jaw tightened, his papers shuffled, and then, without warning, he cut JD Vance off mid-sentence and blurted, "Thank you for your time. We'll be right back." Boom, gone, straight to commercial. I mean, you could feel the panic through the screen. The man who built his career lecturing others about integrity just rage quit on live television because he couldn't handle the truth. ABC producers were screaming in his earpiece to cut away before it got worse, but it was already too late. The damage was done. Clips of that meltdown flooded social media within minutes. Millions of Americans saw it with their own eyes. The exact moment a legacy media giant folded under pressure from a vice president who refused to be bullied. JD Vance didn't lose control. He didn't raise his voice. He just calmly exposed the rot, and Stephanopoulos snapped. That's not journalism. That is surrender. And make no mistake, guys, this wasn't just a bad interview. This was the sound of a propaganda machine exposing live in front of the nation that it once controlled. Now, here's where the story gets even better. In fact, the moment that segment ended, JD Vance didn't retreat. He doubled down. Within hours, his team released a statement saying, the American people deserve media that tells the truth, not networks that protect corruption. And people responded big time. Conservative commentators, independent journalists, even moderates praised JD Vance for staying calm and exposing the double standard. One viral post said it best. JD Vance didn't argue with George, he buried him with facts. Meanwhile, ABC went in damage control mode. Their public relations team quietly pulled the interview off YouTube's trending page, hoping people would forget. But the internet doesn't forget, folks. In fact, the hashtag RageQuitABC trended for 2 days straight. It wasn't just a bad morning show segment, it was about the media finally being held accountable. JD Vance's message was very clear. The days of unchecked media manipulation are over. The truth doesn't need a teleprompter. And for the first time in years, America could feel it. Oh, and just when you thought that the ABC meltdown couldn't get any worse, boom, the Letitia James bombshell dropped. Within 24 hours of that disastrous interview, headlines started pouring in. Federal grand jury investigating New York Attorney General Letitia James for mortgage fraud. You heard that right, guys. The same Letitia James who built her entire career shouting that no one is above the law. All of a sudden, she's now facing an indictment. All of this while suing Donald Trump every other week. She is now facing a federal investigation for lying on her own mortgage application, allegedly claiming her Norfolk, Virginia property as a primary residence to score better terms. Folks, that is textbook mortgage fraud. And the irony, it's almost poetic. This is the same woman who weaponized her office to attack conservatives, who smiled on camera while promising to take down Trump. Now the Justice Department, under President Trump, is saying, no, Letitia, let's take a look at you now. The timing was unreal. In fact, ABC was already humiliated by JD Vance's takedown, and now the face of the left's moral crusade, it's the cause of her own scandal. The media tried to bury it, but now the story is just too big to contain. So JD Vance called it perfectly. He said, maybe it's time for journalists to focus on real corruption, like this over here. So the walls are clearly closing in, and for the first time in years, the media couldn't control the narrative. In fact, I want you to picture this, okay? Reporters chasing JD Vance after that interview, shouting questions about the Letitia James investigation. And what does he say? Calmly, confidently, justice isn't selective anymore. The law applies to everyone. That one sentence hit harder than any campaign ad. It was the signal that America had been waiting for. Confirmation that under President Trump's second term, the weaponized justice system is being de-weaponized. Drop an amen down below if you're happy to hear that. Now, JD Vance made it clear that this isn't revenge, it's restoration. Under Biden, the DOJ shielded its own allies and hunted political opponents, but under Trump, it's simple. If you break the law, you face the law, period. He even hinted at broader investigations, names like James Comey and Adam Schiff, reminding the press that accountability doesn't stop with one name. No, for years, the American people watched elites act untouchable, but now the rules are the same for everyone. You could feel the shift. You can feel the fear in DC. It was palpable. In fact, this wasn't just about Letitia James. It was about a new era of accountability, and JD Vance had just announced it live to the world. Now, let's talk about what happened next, because the meltdown didn't end when the camera stopped rolling. Oh no, it spread through every newsroom in America. ABC scrambled to bury the story. They tried to edit clips, mute the key exchanges, and push lighthearted celebrity fluff segments to distract their viewers. But it didn't work because people saw what was happening. They saw Stephanopoulos fold. They saw the arrogance collapse under the weight of the truth. Then came the Letitia James panic. CNN, silent. MSNBC, pretending it doesn't exist. ABC, too busy talking about Taylor Swift's concert attendance to mention that one of their political heroes might have just committed mortgage fraud. So here's the thing. When Trump faces endless indictments, they filled weeks of airtime. But when Letitia James gets hit with federal charges, crickets. That's not journalism. That's protection racketeering for the Democratic Party. That's right. JD Vance called it hypocrisy on steroids. He said the quiet part out loud. These people, they don't care about the truth. They care about control. And he's right. The media's panic isn't just about losing viewers. It's about losing power. Their monopoly on information, it's gone. They can't silence the clips. They can't delete the outrage. For the first time in modern history, legacy media isn't shaping public opinion. They're running from it. And that brings us to the final takeaway, the message every American needs to hear tonight. This story was never about George Stephanopoulos or even Tom Homan or even Letitia James. It was about a turning point, a moment where truth finally overpowered propaganda. JD Vance, he walked in the ABC studios surrounded by cameras, critics, and ambush questions, and he walked out having completely flipped the entire narrative. One man, one moment, tore the mask off of a billion-dollar media empire and reminded America that courage still matters. And just hours later, as the same media tried to spin, hide, and distract the news of Letitia James' federal probe, it proved his point. Corruption, it can only hide for so long before the truth kicks down the door. The legacy media, they can rage quit, they can censor, they can lie, but they cannot stop reality. Because in Trump's America, under real leadership, under law and order, the truth always wins. And that, ladies and gentlemen, this is why this meltdown will go down as the day that the empire cracked and the people finally took the microphone back. Hit the like button, subscribe, share this video. We'll see you next time.